America's faith in capitalism hits a new low, while socialism holds steady. The American dream now carries a $5 million price tag, far beyond the reach for most families. Seniors' reading and math scores fall to their worst level in decades. The IRS backs off a crackdown on billion-dollar tax shelters, and CBS names a conservative policy veteran as its new ombudsman. All that and more. Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker. Hi, and welcome. This is Filtered. Thanks so much for joining me. This is your daily dive into the top news stories about business, technology, economics, and cultural events around the world, all filtered through the lens of communication and personal development skills. Here's my pledge to you. If you spend a little time with me today and every day, you won't just know a little more about the news. You won't be doom scrolling and getting bummed out. You will learn from the news ways to make yourself more successful in your personal life and your professional life. That's why we're here. Let's dive right in to the top story. Capitalism hits record low support in the United States. According to Gallup, the polling organization, American support for capitalism has slipped to its lowest point since polling began on this topic in 2010. Just 54% now view capitalism favorably, down from 60% in 2021. Socialism, meanwhile, remains steady at 39%. The partisan breakdown is stark. For the first time, less than half of Democrats, 42%, say they view capitalism positively. Instead, 66% of Democrats now say they feel more favorable toward socialism. Independents lean toward capitalism, 51% to 38%, while Republicans remain overwhelmingly supportive, with 74% positive about capitalism and only 14% about socialism. When Gallup asked about economic institutions more broadly, Americans expressed strong support for small business at 95% and free enterprise at 81%. Big business, however, continues its slide, with only 37% viewing it positively, down sharply from 52% in 2019. Gallup concludes that while Americans still believe in the economic system overall, their trust is concentrated in smaller local enterprises rather than in corporations. Okay, so what's the real message here? It's fine to see these headlines, Americans don't like capitalism anymore, and it makes people panic and scare socialism, more favorable than ever. But let's step back in a minute and take a breath. The Communist Manifesto says we should have public schools, public parks. Yet I don't see that freaking out anyone. That is socializing schools, not just letting rich people have schools and poor people work in factories all day long. Socialism called for public parks. So there's a huge difference between the government controlling every aspect of our market system and every single industry versus having some things we all share. I think that's all Americans really want, is they want a stronger social safety net. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. And I appreciate you spending some time with me today on this issue. But let's go deeper. It is true that capitalism at some level, even though all the greatest marketers and communicators work in the capitalistic system, they don't really market their brand very well. Socialism has the really cool Che Guevara t-shirts and berets. You don't see a lot of t-shirts with Adam Smith on it. That is true. The other aspect of a free market system is generally, not always, but generally it allows for free communication, a free press. And that free press is going to pick apart the negatives, the bad things. Oh, unemployment's high, inflation's high. It's going to make capitalism always look bad. In socialistic systems, you can sweep all that under the rug. In Fidel Castro's Cuba, you basically only saw good news most of the time in the media. Things were always better. Same under Mao's regime in China. Good news is what flourished. That's not what any fair-minded person wants. So a part of the problem capitalism has is when you see incremental improvement over a decade, over 30 years, no one notices. By every objective measure, if I look at the world today in 2025 versus the day I was born in 1962, there's just no comparison. 90% of the world was living in misery and poverty when I was born. And now less than 10% is. I mean, that is what capitalism did. I'm not going to make a lot of friends on the left of center and certain progressive circles for saying that. Is capitalism perfect? No. Is there unfairness? No. Is inequality a problem? Yes. But compared to what? You always have to ask yourself, compared to what? Winston Churchill famously said, democracy is awful, except compared to all the other forms of government. And I would say the very same thing about capitalism as an economic means of production and running a society. It's awful compared to all the others. Now, let's be candid here. There is no such thing as 100% libertarian approved free market capitalism, where there's no intervention by the government. And it's just rugged, strong individualists doing what they want. Unless you count Somalia or Libya, where not much government. And by the way, where you can buy slaves this very day in an open market. Do you really want to go back to that type of a free market system? I don't think so. So a part of why capitalism, I believe, gets bad PR, but also why it's really a good system, is that it is so malleable. It borrows and takes and steals from all the other systems out there to figure out what works. The original laissez-faire, let the private sector handle everything, didn't account for public schools. You want your kid to go to school, hire a tutor. You don't have money for a school? Put your kid out in the crops, picking cotton, picking corn. That's free market capitalism. And yet very few Americans who call themselves capitalist would really articulate that vision of capitalism. So the reality we live in is we live in a hybrid model. We live in a hybrid capitalistic market socialistic system. The word scares a lot of people. But you show me someone who says they hate all forms of socialism, and I'll show you someone who probably supports their local school. I'll show you someone who supports their local police officers. That's right. We have socialized police in America. We have socialized roads in America. I used to live half a block away from the Vanderbilt Parkway in Long Island, which was from the 19th century, and it was a toll road. If you really think capitalism solves every single problem, then you would think every single road in America should be a toll road. Not many people want to do that, even with the ease of Easy Pass and not having to stop and put a quarter in the toll booth. People actually like having socialized roads. People like having socialized police, because we could have a system that says, okay, there is no police. You have money, hire your own armed guards, hire your own security force. And if you don't have money and you get robbed, tough luck. We could, if we really truly believe that everything has to be in the private sector, that's the world we'd end up with. But we don't. Because human beings like to say, I'm ideologically pure and I'm only the sincere person with a pure set of principles, but we're not. Everybody has compromise. Show me someone who says, individual's property is the only thing that matters and individual property rights are the only thing that matters. And I'll show you someone that if I bought the land next to their house and said, okay, let me set up a 7-Eleven next to your $5 million mansion, they'd be like, oh no, the local code doesn't allow that. Local permitting, the housing authority doesn't allow that. They're all in favor of government regulation for things like that. So At some level, everybody's a hypocrite. Don't pretend you're not. So I am not particularly alarmed by this polling data showing that capitalism is losing favor, because it's not as if the vast majority of Americans are going to be voting for candidates who say, let's socialize 100% the internet and the banking system and all manufacturing. And let's go back to what Castro had, in 1975 in Cuba. Let's go back to what the Soviet Union had in 1985, when everyone had to stand in lines for bread and all the shelves were empty. No one really wants to go back to that. So that's the problem I see with polls like this, is they're not particularly meaningful. What it does do is send a message to policy officials and public officials running for office that you can run on the platform of helping people from time to time and using government tax dollars to do it, whether that means expanding Medicare, Medicaid, perhaps expanding housing credits, or actually building houses for people, as is done in other countries, and giving it to people without down payments. The idea that you can instantly end an argument and say, well, that's it, we don't have to talk about it anymore, it's a moot point because I just used the word socialism. I think it's a good thing that we can't instantly end the conversation constantly just by tossing out that boogeyman word of social. Am I a socialist? No. And yet, are you a socialist? If you like a public school system, if you like police officers paid for by tax dollars, guess what? You and I really are both socialists at some level. Hey, if you're enjoying this kind of take and want to hear more stories filtered through the lens of communication, make sure you're following the show, whether you're watching or listening. New episodes drop every single day. And if there's a little notification option where you are now, go ahead and turn it on. It helps you stay in the loop. The $5 million price tag on the American dream. The American dream was once about opportunity, home ownership, and security. Today, new research from Investopia shows that achieving that dream carries a lifetime price tag of roughly $5 million. That includes raising children, buying homes and cars, healthcare, retirement, vacation, pets, and even weddings. Retirement is the biggest single cost, requiring about $1.6 million. But according to Ambassador Wealth Management's Philip Batten, quote, almost half of Americans don't have any retirement savings at all. The average nest egg is just $134,000, nowhere close to what's recommended. And here's the hard truth. Only about 1% to 2% of American households will ever accumulate $5 million in net worth. Now, that's different from lifetime earnings. That's a higher bar. That's fewer than 2.5 million households out of 130 million households. For everyone else, the math just doesn't add up. Still, surveys show that most people cling to home ownership, vacations, and even pet ownership as essential parts of the dream. As Batten puts it, people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. Today, reaching even part of that dream requires second jobs, side hustles, or redefining success altogether. Okay, so what's the real message here? For so many people across the United States, the ultimate American dream, doing better than their parents, having the home, vacations, a good standard of life, education for their kids, a comfortable retirement, is slipping away. And this is a huge problem. And Democrats and Republicans both deserve some blame on this. It is becoming increasingly difficult to really feel like you have it all. But a part of it is people's expectations have gone way up too. In 1970, the average house size was about 1,400 feet. Now it's double that. So a part of it needs to be, we need more economic opportunity in our economy. But a part of it is people need to realize not everyone needs to be able to vacation in Europe every year in order to feel like they've made it. Let's dig a little bit deeper here and look at some of the facts of the case. So, the price tag here, and it gets headlines, and I guess I'm guilty of falling for the headline clickbait too. $5 million sounds like an astronomical amount of money, and indeed, it is more money. It's certainly more money than most Americans are worth. It's more money than most people make in a lifetime. Now, according to Investopia, and they have a bias, they want people to invest. I'm not saying that's bad. They're claiming that you really need $1.6 million in retirement savings in order to get about $63,000 a year for 20 years of retirement. That to me sounds pretty reasonable. It is a little bit scary when half of Americans have no retirement savings at all. Truth be told, until I was, 45, I didn't have any. You can start at any time. It's never too late to start. The best time to start saving for retirement is when you're 18. The second best time to start for retirement is today, regardless of your age. And I'm here to tell you, you can catch up and then some if you make it a priority. Home ownership, according to this survey, is $957,000 in lifetime costs. I mean, that actually seems pretty low to me, depending on where you live. Their estimated cost for college for 2 kids, $876,000. You could spend a lot more than that. You could spend a lot less. I mean, let's not forget, most Americans do not go to Harvard and pay the full fee. Most people in America go to non-selective state schools where tuition is still relatively low. Yes, there are cost of living expenses, but you don't have to spend nearly $1 million to educate your kids. But that is one area where there's increasing stress because, as you've heard me talk about before, when I was a kid, I mean, my 2 sisters went to very respected, great state institutions, and the tuition couldn't have been more than about $2,000 a year. I did go to a private school. It was a lot more expensive, but I only had $10,000 of debt when I graduated. So that is a legitimate area of real stress for people, the cost of education, the cost of housing. And then healthcare. The estimates from Investopia is that you're going to spend $414,000 on healthcare throughout a lifetime to have sort of an upper middle class life. So those 3 areas are frankly 3 areas where government has a huge, huge role in establishing the marketplace, establishing pricing, and establishing what people pay. And this is where, to go back to our previous segment, when you look at the so-called horrible, evil socialist economies like in Scandinavia and Northern Europe, their governments really subsidize and reduce costs, even factoring in taxation, to make those things much less expensive, much more affordable for people. Now, according to this research, people spend $180,000 on vacations in a lifetime, which to me, that sounds low once you get a little bit fancy. 85% of Americans still say homeownership is central to the dream. Here's the real message I have for you. If you want to be happy and successful, you're going to have to disregard stories like this. You don't have to have $5 million to be happy. You could make $900,000 in a lifetime, and you personally could be happy if you decide to be happy and appreciate what you have. You could easily make $50 million and be extraordinarily unhappy your whole life because you're going to be comparing yourself to someone who made 100 million or 200 million. You can be worth $1 billion and compare yourself to someone who has $2 billion and they've got the 500-foot yacht and you only have the 350-foot yacht. And now you look poor compared to them. So much of wealth and affluence is a relative thing for human beings. And it's a sad, but I think realistic reading of human nature is so many of us would much rather make $50,000 a year if everyone we knew and everyone in our community made $30,000 than to make $1 million a year and everyone we know in our community makes $1.3 million a year. Wealth is very much a relative thing. So you've got to decide, how much money do you need to live life on your terms? I find, frankly, the more money I have, the more I realize it's the things that don't cost money that I enjoy the most, that give me the most joy. I enjoy spending time with my family. I enjoy spending time playing pickleball on public courts quite often. I enjoy walking in nature. These things don't cost anything. And you could certainly sit back and say, well, TJ, easy for you to say, you got everything you need. You got every luxury you could want. That is true, but it's also because I decide what I want based on me, not how do I play the expectations game. Because I could easily get overextended. I could say, gosh, several of my friends have $1 million boats. I need a $1.2 million boat. Instead, I say, hey, sure, I'd love to go boating with you when you invite me on your boat. I don't want a boat. To me, that's a luxury, not having a boat. I could buy a new car every single year and rack up more debt, reduce my amount of retirement and savings and portfolio. If I bought, 2 new cars every year, I got a nice car. And one of them is quite old. My family and I, we have 2 cars. One of them is a year and a half old. One of them is about 14 years old. I love both cars. I don't have to have a new car every year in order to feel like I've made it. So that's my real message to you. And this goes back to ancient Stoic philosophy. Wealth is about being satisfied and happy with what you have. That doesn't mean low standards. That doesn't mean you have to live in the gutter and say, well, I'm in a homeless shelter. This is as good as it gets. That's not what I'm suggesting. But what I am suggesting is focus on things that actually give you joy. If you love being a school teacher and the maximum salary you ever make is $80,000 a year, and you love the extra time you have, vacation time you have compared to an investment banker, and you have enough money to house yourself, to give yourself health care, to educate your kids, to buy the books that give you joy, to vacation, perhaps 2 hours away from your home regularly at a beach, and you have a lot of friends and hobbies, you're actually much, much richer than a lot of people who spent all of their time chasing every dollar, working 120 hours a week, not even knowing their kids or their spouse, and go, 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 making more money, make more money. And then, they wake up one day, their kids are gone, their spouse hates them or divorces them. They're sitting around in a big empty house, nothing to do, no friend. They're now retired or been kicked out of their investment firm. And they're like, well, now what do I do? I tell you what some of them do. They drink. Some I know have killed themselves. Sorry to sound that dark this early in the morning, but there are different types of wealth. Money is a particular type of wealth, and it is important to have some. Not having enough causes massive stress. I don't know that everyone has to have $5 million or feel like they didn't make it and they didn't enjoy the American dream. More in a moment. We'll be right back after this break. Want more? Grab my 5-book success library for $9.95 at tjwalker.com/books. It's the fastest way to level up your communication. Imagine being the most confident person in the room, whether you're on Zoom or on stage. That's what thousands of professionals are learning to do right now through my online communication courses. At Media Training Worldwide, you can access my complete training library on demand, affordable, and actually effective. Whether you're preparing for media interviews, client presentations, or TED-style talks, I've got you covered. Check it out, MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. You'll never wing it again. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Welcome back to Filtered. This is your daily dive into the top business, technology, and culture stories that we're all looking at around the world, but then analyzing it, filtering it through the lens of communication and personal development skills, all with the goal of making you more successful, your personal life and your professional life. Diving into issue 3 today. U.S. seniors in high school hit 30-year low in reading. According to the New York Times, American high school seniors have recorded their lowest reading scores since 1992. New federal data from the National Assessment of Educational Progress shows about a third of 12th graders tested last year lack basic reading skills, meaning many struggle to interpret a political speech or understand a character's motivation in a story. Math scores were also grim, the lowest since 2005, with nearly half of students scoring below basic levels. Experts say the pandemic accelerated these declines, but note the slide began years earlier. More screen time, less printed reading, and weakened accountability in schools have all played a role. Matthew Solder, acting commissioner of the National Center for Education Statistics, called it, quote, a stark decline. Only about a third of seniors are leaving high school prepared for college level reading and math. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon added that the results confirm a devastating trend that will shape America's workforce and democracy for years to come. Okay, what's the real message here? This isn't going to make me popular here, but yes, reading levels are way, way down. And if you're a parent and you let your kids stare at a cell phone all day long or a screen all evening long, you're complicit in this. You are destroying your child's ability to live up to their full potential. We are in a full-fledged reading crisis. And the first thing you should do as a parent, let your child see you reading a book or a Kindle for an hour a day. Lead by example. Let's go a little bit deeper here and look at some of the statistics. The point of this article in the Times today is that the reading score is lowest in 33 years. They point out American seniors can scroll TikTok but can't really understand a political speech. That makes it easier for demagogues, regardless of the party, to true and fick people and manipulate people. That's a huge, huge problem. It's not that people don't understand this letter and this letter and this word, but it's putting it all together, understanding the context and the meaning. And I'm sorry, reading the transcription, reading the subtitles while you're watching a movie isn't the same thing. It just isn't. So we got to get over this notion that, I read and that's good because I'm reading the transcription, the subtitles while I watch the movie. Great Expectations. Now, you need to actually read Great Expectations if that was assigned to you. I do have friends of my own daughter, the parents, who say, my daughter doesn't like to read, so we got the audio book. It operates quite differently in the brain. When you are reading text, it forces your brain to do things. It stretches it, it twists it, it makes it larger. If you're listening to an audiobook, and I'm not opposed to audiobooks, I occasionally listen to them. They're great if you have to drive or you're on a bus somewhere. Nothing wrong with audiobooks, but it should not replace actual reading of text. Reading text fires things in your brain in a way that's completely different than if you're just passively seeing words go by as text on a screen. Now, the math scores have gone down. Well, that is a problem. Additionally, the thesis of this article in today's Times is that screen time is blamed. And we do get to a point where everyone wants to blame the pandemic for everything and cell phones for everything. Is some of that overkill? Yeah, but you know what else is overkill? Looking at the screen time on your phone and seeing that's 4, 5, 6, 8, 12 hours for a day. I would urge you, look at the book time that your child puts in. Chances are it's not very impressive. Probably not 5 hours a day book time. And you look at the kids who do the best academically, get into the best colleges, do well in life, and quite often it is people who spend the most book time. Now, it doesn't have to be a paper book. The problem with reading on a cell phone is it's too easy. You're reading, you have every intention to read this novel, and it's right there. You have a Kindle app or some other app, a Google app. You're reading that book, and boop, there's a text from a friend. Oh, what's Billy say? You get a notification asking you to do something. Another notification. Oh, so-and-so liked your post on Facebook. Oh, I wonder what Facebook post it was. Oh, let me take one, and then you're gone. You'll never read another page of that book today because the notifications pulled you away. That's the power of the cell phone. That's why Facebook and Google and all these tech companies give engineers, software engineers, $100 million pay packages, all designed to trick you, manipulate you, tease you, tantalize you to get you off of a book where they're not making any money and spending time on their websites so they can roll ads in front of you and make more billions of dollars. So it's somewhat of a fool's errand, I believe, to try to read a book on a cell phone. Now, for many years, I was a huge fan. I went all digital for a while. Then I went back to all paper books, especially because I find for me personally, and the research bears this out for most people, if you're reading a paper book the last hour of the evening, it's much easier to get a good night's sleep. It does not get your brain all stimulated and agitated. You're not getting a text from a client at 10 o'clock right before you're going to sleep that they're angry and want to cancel a contract and now you can't sleep. If you're reading a paper book, it takes you out of the minutia, the trials and tribulations of the day, and allows you to get into another world. That's the beauty of reading. Expands your mind, but it takes you to another place. So for many years, I only read a paper book or a hardback paper book for the last hour of the day and did my best to turn off my cell phone 2 hours before I wanted to go to bed or to sleep. So typically by 7:30 p.m., I've turned off my cell phone. I still try to do that. The one thing I have changed is I do use a paper white Kindle. So I don't know how to access the internet on it. I don't know how to get any email. No one sends me a text. So when I'm reading that for the last hour of the day, it does relax me, allows my brain to really think deeply, because a book is about a sustained argument on a sustained topic for hundreds of pages, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. That's the beauty of it. It's easier to sleep. It's easier to learn. It's easier to open your brain to new major thought patterns. And that's what I think is so crucial, and what not just high school seniors are missing out, but what everyone is missing out. And the real challenge for our society is no matter how good your book is, it's never going to be quite as exciting as a cell phone where your best friend is texting you about something really good or bad that happened to another good friend of yours. That's always going to be more interesting, especially to teenagers. So it's going to take some artificial constraint. It's going to take some actual parenting. Maybe you don't give your kid a phone. I'm happy to see New York City and some other cities across America are banning cell phones from schools. I applaud that. It's very difficult to put restrictions. I thought that I had put a good restriction on my own daughter's cell phone. We only wanted her to be able to call her friends, call us, text just her friends, text us. We had the Apple parental controls, and I found out just yesterday that lo and behold, she'd hacked the system, gotten rid of the parental controls, and had been on TikTok for the last 4 months. So shame on me for not monitoring that even more. But what we try to do in my own household is have a family reading hour. Do we do it every night? No, but I try. You and I can't necessarily affect all of society and the reading scores for our entire society, but you and I can have an impact on ourselves, our own family. And you can start by trying to build in a tradition of reading time in your family. I hope you already have a tradition of a family dinner time where cell phones are put away and people can actually sit and have a conversation with family members. That's great. You probably already have a tradition of a family movie time. Even if you live just with one other person, why not a tradition of being in the same room and everyone is silently reading? Let's look at some more of the statistics. 1/3 of seniors lack basic reading skills. The pandemic did make things a lot worse. Top students, they're continuing to do well. In fact, they're pulling ahead. This is a part of a trend of so much of society where the top 1% are pulling further and further away from everyone else. People talk about income inequality, and you can bemoan that at a societal level, and I think it's a legitimate issue. But if you're letting your child spend all their time watching screens, watching TV, watching videos, playing video games, and the kid next door who is applying to MIT next year is spending all of his or her time reading real books, guess what? That's where the inequality starts. It's not all government policy. Part of it's government policy, but part of it is parental policy. If you're letting your kid fall behind in the actual number of books they read, out the number of hours or minutes they read something real, you're creating to inequality in your own household. Filtered is brought to you by the following. You don't need a new degree. You don't need another expensive coach. You need the right communication habits, and I'll teach them to you in just a few minutes a day. At MediaTrainingWorldwide.com, I've created the most comprehensive library of online communication and personal development courses anywhere. You'll learn public speaking, media training, persuasion, executive presence, and more. These are the same methods I've taught to world leaders, but now they're affordable and accessible to everyone. You can start for free and upgrade anytime. Go now to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Confidence isn't a personality trait, it's a skill, and it's trainable. Welcome back. The IRS pulls back on $100 billion tax shelter crackdowns. According to the New York Times, the Treasury Department is rolling back Internal Revenue Service efforts to rein in some of the most aggressive tax shelters used by multinational corporations and wealthy individuals. The crackdown once projected to raise more than $100 billion over 10 years. It targeted complex schemes promoted by major accounting firms and used by companies like Occidental Petroleum and AT&T. Industry groups and Republican lawmakers lobbied heavily against the enforcement push. In April, the IRS rescinded rules requiring companies to disclose these strategies, making audits harder. It also eased penalties on certain abusive shelters, even as courts had struck down some of the tactics. Former IRS Commissioner Larry Gibbs called congressional intervention, quote, an attempt by elected officials to influence audits, warning that it politicizes the tax system. Critics say these changes allow companies to create billions in tax deductions out of thin air, while ordinary taxpayers are left with fewer options and higher burdens. Okay, so what's the real message here? Washington, D.C. is sending a message to citizens across the country. If you pay taxes, you're a sucker. You're a fool, because the big boys, they're getting 100% breaks. They're coming up with the grandest of tax scams and schemes, and they're paying nothing, because that's what the guy in the White House does. That's what his friends do. So if you continue paying taxes, you're a rube. That is the message. Okay, let's dig a little deeper here. This to me is, I think when the history is written of this, it's going to be seen as just profoundly bizarre. We live in a time where there are massive, massive deficits. Our government's going to spend $7 trillion this year. We're only taking in $5 trillion. So that's a massive, massive deficit. Typically, whether you're running a government or any kind of household budget, typically in that situation, you would say, oh, where can we get any source of money possible? And the government has a source. It's called taxation. It's agreed upon by lawmakers of both parties. And now we have a situation where really, really rich people, I'm not talking about someone who makes $1 million or $2 million a year. I'm talking about someone who's making hundreds of millions of dollars a year, perhaps a billionaire status. They're saying, hey, we don't want to pay any tax. Let's come up with schemes and then let's spend, a few $1 million on lobbyists to get it so that the IRS just doesn't enforce us. Any laws will not apply to us. That is what's happening in the United States today. And it is reducing the amount of money that comes in to our tax coffers. It's exploding the deficit. And it's absolutely absurd. And it does several things. It trickles down and permeates the political culture and our social fabric to the point where we've gone from a time when most Americans thought, well, I want to do my share. I want to be a good citizen, and I want to follow laws, and I want to pay taxes. To now we're at a point where so many Americans feel like, wow, I don't want to be a rube. I don't want to be the only stupid person. I don't want to be the sucker. Nobody else pays taxes. Why should I? So you're seeing cheating spread. You're seeing erosion of confidence in the government. I mean, rules only work if people feel like the rules apply fairly to everyone. Because if you follow a rule and you know in advance no one else is following it, there's a label for you. There's an accurate label for you. It's called stupid. It's stupid to follow a rule if literally you're the only person doing it. If you are out on a highway and everyone's going 70 miles an hour, and you all of a sudden see a speed limit sign that says 15 miles an hour, you're going to feel too stupid to drive 15 miles an hour. Everyone's zooming past you 70 miles an hour. Furthermore, you're going to feel like you're endangering your life and your family's life if you go 15 miles an hour, because cars are going to be zooming past you so much they might run into you and kill you. I mean, I think a lot of people feel that way financially with their health. If they pay taxes, they are being rubes, and they feel like they're supporting a government that is inherently treacherous. Now, I've seen this firsthand in other countries. One very, very large communist country in Asia, shall we say. I don't want to offend too many people this early in the day. But I can tell you in this particular communist-run country, a large communist country in Asia, of the people I've talked to, it's actually considered immoral to pay your taxes. That's right. People who pay taxes are looked down upon because they are supporting a repressive regime. And I could tell you in the United States, where we see masked Gestapo-like officials terrorizing citizens and other people who live in the United States, more and more people in America are feeling the same thing about their government. Why pay taxes if you're funding a repressive regime that is essentially terrorizing the people of the country? So it is a real problem. Let's look at some more facts. This was courtesy of the Times. The billion-dollar tax shelters are thriving. Middle-class taxpayers are the ones who are getting audited and having to pay proportionally a lot more taxes. The IRS is retreating on instructions it was given to by Congress. Lobbyists have lobbied them, and they're saying, okay, lobbyist, you don't want me to go after your 10 rich clients who have this sketchy scheme? Okay, you win. The rollback on just enforcing the rules as they were meant to be is going to cost the U.S. government $100 billion. That's the estimate. Targeted schemes, including basis shifting, creating new deductions without new spending. If that sounds complex, like, that's why it's designed that way. If you have enough money and enough income, you can hire really smart lawyers to just create something out of nothing and not pay any taxes. Occidental Petroleum, some of their moves generated $13 billion in future tax deductions. Industry lobbying groups have pushed to dismantle the IRS enforcement unit. Again, that's just bizarre. So many of these so-called conservatives who say we need to be fiscally prudent, we need to spend no more than we have, we need to have balanced budgets, then do the one thing that makes it even worse. They cut the spending for IRS officials that can actually collect taxes. So it's highly, highly contradictory. Critics say ordinary families face stricter audits than the biggest corporations. So this does play into the myth, and some myths can be based on reality, I guess, that the little guy, the little person, the little woman is getting screwed in America. The big fat cats are getting off. And for people who buy into that, I would say you got a lot of ammunition here with this latest story, because this is not good. Too many people who work for our federal government do not stop and think about what real message are they communicating to the public. And the message here on taxation is very clear. If you're really wealthy, you don't pay tax, or you pay proportionally a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage. We have a current occupant in the White House who brags about how smart he is for not having paid taxes for decades because of some of these phony baloney tax dodge schemes. And that is the ethos that's permeated Washington today. If you are well connected, if you're a really big billionaire, taxes don't apply to you. If you're a middle-class schmuck making $80,000 a year and you took one deduction the wrong way, you don't have a receipt for that underwear you donated to the Goodwill, well, we're going to audit you and make your life miserable. That is essentially the message, and it is a message that is breeding more and more cynicism. Want a shortcut to powerful communication skills? Download the TJ Walker Success Library, 5 of my best-selling books for only $9.95. Go to tjwalker.com/books. Instant access, big impact. I've had entire YouTube channels wiped out overnight, so if you enjoy this show, don't lose track of me. The safest way is my newsletter, substack.com/@TJ Walker Success. Sign up for free and you'll get exclusive commentary, live session alerts, and first access to new tools. Again, that's substack.com. Just search for TJ Walker or go to substack.com/@TJ Walker Success, your direct line to everything I do. Welcome back. CBS News names conservative policy veteran as a news ombudsman. According to the New York Times, CBS has appointed Kenneth Weinstein, the former head of the Hudson Institute, as its new ombudsman. The role was created to review complaints about news coverage and is part of corporate commitments made during the recent Paramount-Skydance merger. Weinstein has long been active in conservative policy circles, but has no background overseeing journalism. He's previously criticized CBS's reporting, including comments on coverage of Israel. Despite that, Paramount described him as an, quote, independent internal advocate for journalistic integrity and transparency. Industry observers note that ombudsmen have become increasingly rare in U.S. media, with outlets like the New York Times and the Washington Post eliminating the role in recent years. CBS's move is unusual in part because the Post was established during a corporate merger, not by newsroom initiatives. Jeff Shell, the new Paramount president, defended the choice, citing Weinstein's judgment and calm approach to complex issues. Skeptics worry, however, about the signal it sends for editorial independence. Okay. What's the real message here? CBS bringing on a corporate ombudsman to oversee their journalism is an absolute scam. This is yet another way of them pandering to the Trump administration, saying, please, please, please let our mergers go through, stay through. Don't put us out of business. Don't revoke our licenses. We'll bribe you. We'll give you anything you want. Here, why don't you just write the script for the news tonight? We're almost at that point. This is extraordinarily dangerous for a democracy to be essentially pandering to only one side, and it's a side filled with political extremism, saying, we don't want to criticize anyone that might be powerful and offended. So here, your guy can be the editor. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. It's nothing inherently wrong with having a corporate ombudsman or a newsroom ombudsman. Newspapers used to have them. The New York Times used to have one, the Washington Post. This is different. This is, for those of you unfamiliar with the Hudson Institute, it is an extreme right-wing political hack operation. They churn out right-wing political propaganda. It's not maybe as bad as the Heritage Foundation, but for anyone who's a centrist, a mainstream policy person, it's considered hack land. Okay? And to turn over editorial discretion to one of the three major broadcast news operations of the country, to a right-wing hack, and say, we want to make you happy, is horrific. Let's step back a minute. If it's one thing I've heard almost every day of my adult life, and even as a teenager, it is the media is too liberal. I've heard that message millions of times over decades. And you got to ask yourself, if you're hearing a message like that from the media and the media is liberal, why would they send that message? Maybe it's a smokescreen. If the media is powerful, let's start off with that assumption. They have the message to get you to believe anything you want. So if the media is powerful and can get you to believe anything, why wouldn't they get you to believe that the media is not what they really are? If they really were liberal, they wouldn't be trying to convince you they were liberal. They'd be trying to convince you they were conservative, right? So there's always been a logical problem with this idea that everyone knows the media is too liberal. I would make the case the media is too consistently willing to placate any conservative and has a lot of biases and towards titillation, towards bleeding, towards controversy, and yes, mostly towards conservative policy issues, even though the average person who works at a prestigious old media organization personally has liberal views. That's more complex. That's complex to fish that out. But that is the reality as I see it. What do you say? You can post your thoughts right here. I read all comments, whether you're watching this live or on demand. If you're listening to this on iTunes, on Apple Podcast, on Google Music, Spotify, or any of the 100 or so podcasting platforms we're on, you can always go to my community tab on my YouTube channel, which is TJ Walker Success, or you can just go to YouTube and type in Filtered with TJ Walker, and you can leave your comments there as well. Let's look at a few more facts from this story. He's clearly a conservative policy veteran who's now going to be the judge of fairness. I want you to think of your favorite college football team, or let's say soccer team for our friends in India. Now ask yourself, how would the refs do things if your number one adversary, your number one sports enemy, if that team got to pick who the referee is, or the head referee that all the other referees have to appeal to? Do you think that might affect the outcome of some games? I'm pretty sure you do. I don't think you'd like that. That's essentially where we have. Now, don't take my word for it. There's a prominent conservative intellectual, William Crystal. He was Dan Quayle's brain in the first Bush White House. He famously said that, when all of us conservatives, and he was one and is one, when we complain about the media, all we're really doing is working the refs. And by that, he means if you just complain every single time that's unfair, in a subtle psychological way, the ref is going to be so worried about being accused of being unfair, they're going to start calling the close ones in your favor. And that is the playbook of conservatives and the MAGA crowd in America today. You just always complain anything that isn't 100% positive to you, anything that doesn't twist the facts to make you look good, you simply say it's biased. And therefore, you discredit the news source in the eyes of a lot of your followers. You also, and this is true by all accounts, anyone who knows anyone who works in mainstream media today, everyone in the mainstream media is sort of bending over backwards, walking on eggshells, doing anything they can, not to be more accurate, not to be fair. They're specifically trying not to alienate anyone who sees themselves as a conservative or as a MAGA follower. And because of that, they are distorting the news. And it makes it virtually impossible for accurate information to get out about what's going on in the world. Let's look at some more facts on this issue. Corporate mergers, not journalism standards. That's now what's dictating this newsroom oversight. Weinstein has no newsroom experience. So he can just say, well, you did a story and it pointed out that Donald Trump lied. And that's unfair because some Democrat a long time ago lied and you didn't give that equal coverage. So you can't run that story. That's essentially what we're looking at. And for Paramount to say he's an advocate for journalistic integrity, no, he's not. He's an advocate for right-wing policies and right-wing political agendas and protecting politicians who happen to be on the right wing. That's his agenda. And this is profoundly, profoundly disturbing. I've made this prediction earlier in the life of this podcast. I'll make it again. I don't think we're far away from one of the three major broadcast news networks in America simply ending their news, saying, hey, we're in the entertainment business. It's not really a big piece of our overall revenue pie. It's nothing but headaches. We're tired of getting bashed over the skull by right-wingers who say we don't pander to them enough. We're just going to exit the news business. I think we're going to see one of the three major networks do that in the next 5 years. You heard it here first, folks. Back in a minute with our final grab bag segment. Want a shortcut to powerful communication skills? Download the TJ Walker Success Library, 5 of my best-selling books for only $9.95. Go to tjwalker.com/books. Instant access, big impact. I've had entire YouTube channels wiped out overnight. So if you enjoy this show, don't lose track of me. The safest way is my newsletter, substack.com/@TJ Walker Success. Sign up for free and you'll get exclusive commentary, live session alerts, and first access to new tools. Again, that's substack.com. Just search for TJ Walker or go to substack.com/@TJ Walker Success. Your direct line to everything I do. And now for the grab bag section. Epstein's birthday book, released by House panel. The House Oversight Committee published a redacted copy of Jeffrey Epstein's 238-page birthday book, revealing tributes that openly celebrated his predatory behavior and included crude drawings and stories from friends and associates. The release is fueling new pressure on the administration and Congress over transparency around the broader Epstein files. Redacted book release. Lewd tributes detailed transparency fight intensifies. This is just getting thicker and thicker and thicker. Now, there was a time when we didn't talk much about Epstein in the last month. Mike Johnson, the Republican leader, sort of famously sent everyone at home more than a month ago, hoping we don't talk about it anymore. Trump went on to commit other travesties every single day, hoping we wouldn't talk about this, but it's back. The issue is not going away. And it is amazing. I should bring it up on screen here, but for those of you listening on audio, picture this in your mind. It did officially release the drawing of what appears to be a naked woman, the poem signed by Donald Trump in the woman's private part areas with his signature, talking about all that he and Jeffrey Epstein have in common. And their secrets they have in common, and their secret to staying young. Now, that doesn't prove anything, But let's be honest here. Is there anyone who isn't a complete 100% Trump-loving stooge who doesn't look at that and think, okay, sure sounds like these guys had a lot of fun partying, whether you want to call it fooling around, having sex, or out and out child abuse. It sure sounds, and I have no evidence of this, it sure sounds like the two of them are pals and reminiscing all the time. They were fooling around with naked 17-year-olds and 16-year-olds. It sounds like that. It feels like that. It's just hard to imagine what else this text could imply. Now, I will say something in Donald Trump's defense. So some of my Democratic friends, centrist friends, liberal friends are going to get upset by this because it sounds like I'm defending him. A little context. Trump has had more than 20 women come forward and allege groping, sexual harassment, sexual assault. Not just talking about E. Jean Carroll, who by most definitions, what the judge found, although it wasn't officially labeled that, meets the modern contemporary standard of what people understand to be rape. So there have been a lot of women who have come forward, and these are women who at the time E. Jean Carroll was in her 40s, women in their 30s and 20s, not to mention countless, Playboy centerfolds, porn stars who've just talked about him, consensually having sex. So that's a whole nother issue. What we haven't heard yet, and this is a bit mystifying to me, is a woman who's today, let's say 40 years old, coming forward and saying, yes, I was at Mar-a-Lago, I was at Epstein Island, I was 16 and a half, I was already 6 feet tall, I was, prematurely mature and developed, and yes, I had sex with Donald Trump. We haven't heard that. I'm frankly surprised. Now, I can understand a million reasons why a now 40-year-old woman wouldn't want to say that. She'd be inundated with death threats. She would be attacked. Her family and friends would be harassed. If she had children in school, they would be harassed and surrounded. Life would become absolutely miserable. So I understand why someone, if that actually happened to them, they wouldn't want to say it. But given the fact that we've had, more than 20 women, by last count, it was some 23 women who've come forward. And my producer just added, so this is now the front page of most major newspapers in America. What appears to be the torso of a naked woman. You see the signature of Donald Trump. And it's frankly just kind of bizarre. He, of course, denies it. Why anyone who is known as a serial liar like Trump would be believed, I don't know. So check out this drawing. This is a part of official releases from the United States government. This is a part of the Epstein file. It's not a client list, but this is the birthday party book that was put together. Now, Donald Trump says, oh, that's not my signature. I don't sign my signature that way. Well, they've gone back. The researchers and journalists from major news organizations have gone back, looked at how Donald Trump signed his name 25 years ago when this happened, and they compared it to how he signed his name for letters commending Rudy Giuliani and different other political era figures of the time. And it's exactly the same. So I don't think any credible person really doubts that this is Donald Trump's signature. He is on record is saying they were good friends. Epstein's on record as saying Trump was his best friend. And I don't know, I'm not a pedophile, but I have a hard time imagining if I were Jeffrey Epstein and I'm a world-renowned pedophile, and everywhere I go, everyone knows I'm completely surrounded by dozens of children all day long, and they come in all day long and massage me and do all sorts of things, often in front of people. And I've got this entourage, and my plane is stock full of teenage girls all the time. I just have a hard time imagining that my best friend, whom I socialize with constantly, isn't aware of that and a part of that and in that scene. I just have a hard time imagining that. So this issue is not going away. And it's utterly fascinating because this is the one issue that Trump's own supporters can't seem to get past. Now, any decent human being, and certainly centrist and non-MAGA cult members, and Democrats and liberals and progressives, and again, anyone from center right to the left is obviously concerned about a pedophile, a potential pedophile holding the most powerful office in the land. Any sensible person would say someone like this, needs to be uncovered, exposed, condemned, prosecuted, punished. And that's what's bizarre, because you have basically everyone across the spectrum has an interest in this, because the right wing, the MAGA lovers, as much as they love Trump, and they do love Trump, they still want to know what really happened here with Epstein. And the issue's not going away. I try not to dwell on it. If you're seeing this in isolation, we talked about 5 other serious substantive issues today in the story before we ever mentioned the Epstein files. But at some point, it is dominating the conversation. It's dominating the culture in America and has a huge impact on the rest of the world. And that's why we're here. I'm TJ Walker. I want to thank you for spending time with me today. Please subscribe to the show, follow the show, whatever podcasting platform you like. If you like watching video, we're here on YouTube every day, on Facebook Live, on LinkedIn. Soon we're going to be coming to you on Twitter X every day. We're on Substack every day on the podcast version on demand. So we're here for you. Please like it, leave comments, share it, tell your friends about it. Thanks. See you tomorrow.